the mental damage of what happens when you're in a place of so-called safety is can be destroying. And I struggle to see too many people within our Caribbean, when I'm focusing on our Caribbean community, that are broken. And not only their will is broken, their health is gone and whatever, they're still and we had an opportunity to input into them. So this conversation for me is another conversation for people to open their eyes and actually realize that health wise, physically, if I said I had a cold, people would be like, oh yeah, but that's a physical health issue. But if I've got an extreme situation like cancer, that's the same physical health. It's just different variations on the same spectrum. And we have to realize that we do face in our life through pressures and sickness that are to do with our mental well-being, and but we're not allowed to say that too loud, but I just you say, because if I said put your hands up if you've gone through mental struggles, no one puts their hands up. no one admits it, you know what I mean? But the reality show is that we face pressures beyond craziness, and it's great to be a support towards them, but sis, right, so you mentioned before that you was in church and people said certain things and whatever and whatsoever. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what sort of things were, and I think that I can bring on conversations what I've had with other people, but I'm talking to you per se now, but what would people say in terms of bullying wise? What would you class as and if you don't mind me terming it bullying, when you was in church? What were people actually saying?
Okay. So I think I was like to know what the definition of something is. So if I look at the definition of bullying, it means somebody who's superior or has influence and is using that position to intimidate you and trying to force you to do something that you don't want to do, or force you to believe or think the way that might not be comfortable for you to be believing in. So I'll give you one scenario of people in superior positions, or thinking that they're in superior positions. Sometimes when they're older than you, they think they're superior anyway, but we won't go there. So you know what I mean? But I think one scenario that really stands out to me, and I will never forget this, is I remember one time I had a clash with one of the sisters at my church, and she's old now. I'm a teenager. And if I disagreed, I would say, excuse me, but I disagree. You can't talk to me like that. No. So it was, and I think because I said to her, sorry, you can't talk to me like that. And I think I wasn't being rude, but maybe she thought I was being rude, but I was just trying to say to her, because in some cultures you can't talk to certain people in a certain way. You have to come to them in the Caribbean culture. Sister so and so, I just like to say, blah blah blah. But I was like, sister so and so, I disagree, and I'm not agreeing with that, and you can't talk to me like that. So the shock of it, she wanted to go and talk to my foster mum about it, but my foster mum wasn't around for some reason that Sunday. She just wasn't around. So the following week, I was sat with my friends in church, and when the same sister you had a clash with is up on the pulpit preaching, and then all of a sudden, she didn't have to say my name, but it was a case of when some parents have some unruly children who want to talk to you in certain ways, and she kind of got this scripture to back it up, and we have to pray that God's will, and I was like, what? And when your friends kind of knew. They all looked at me, and certain adults looked at me, kind of shocked, this uncomfortable vibe in church and people turning around. I just went outside. I just said to myself, no. I just went outside. I went outside and I thought to myself, really? But at that time, I didn't think in church. I just thought, really, is this normal? Is this for real? So I went outside and I stayed outside until church finished. And then I came back in and I sat down, and it was the nice thing about it, which, if there can be a nice thing about it, there were certain adults who just came And you know how this goes, Roger. They don't say anything, but they're rubbing your back. They're rubbing your back.
Yeah. Bless her, Lord. Bless her.
So
Bless her.
Some people come up to me and they're rubbing my back. And I'm like, why are you rubbing my back? And then some of my friends are like, are you all right? We know she's preaching about you. Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, but then, that wasn't sort of, and it always was like the norm in the church I was growing up in. It's like, the church was great. I loved it. You know what I mean? I think there were some great times I had in church that was jokes. Sometimes in church you can get the most jokes. But when it was those dark times where people didn't get on, people would use the pulpit to tell you that they don't like you. They wouldn't come to you and want to resolve it and sit with you and say, you upset me the other day. If they were preaching that day, they'll be telling you from the pulpit, using the scripture, but not saying your name, to say, I don't like you, or what you did was wrong, and you need to come and talk to me, and they use the scripture to back it up. When some people used to testify, and it was Amazing Grace, I'll sit down or say certain things in their testimony. This code, this code where they talk about how somebody hurt them, but it was code that they it was like they chucked the darts back at you, but undercover. But if you knew, if you were the person that was getting the dart, you knew that they was talking about you. So that was a kind of intimidation. So what do you do as a child? Do you go and say, well, I heard what you said, and I'm really sorry. I didn't do any of that. I just said, you know what, it's not right, and you can't go up in the pulpit and talk about me like that. It's definitely not right. And I grew up seeing people being talked about like that on the pulpit, and as you said before, just leave. They never came back. But they loved God, but just didn't want to be around the church circle, just didn't want to be around that.
Quick question. How old were you about? I know you probably can't give me the exact day, or how old was you around when that happened to you?
How old was I? I was in my teens. I was in secondary school.
So you wasn't even left school?
I was in secondary school. I wasn't in college yet. I was in secondary school. Wow. So I'm a teenager, just, trying to boss life. But, trying to, flex myself and trying to come to terms with being in care and just, having my own, what I thought was my identity. Trying to look after myself as well at the means, trying to defend myself, because, when that safety net of your family's not around you, even though you've got a foster family, but at the same time, you're trying to defend and look after yourself, become a survivor. And, no, you can't talk to me like that. What you're trying to, when you should have had that protection around you, you're doing it yourself. So I was in my teens at the time. But it was just a case of, sometimes people, you must respect me. You're the child. Yes, I must respect you. But come on, try to come correct. Try to create a good relationship so I can, naturally respect you, naturally want to love you as my elder, naturally want to come to you and find that safe place in you. I didn't find that safe place in some people in the church, and I found that safe place then I did find it in some people, but it was just the balance. As I said, in this world, we're dealing with human nature and we're dealing with characters. So I don't know what that sister, had gone through when she was growing up, and maybe she thought that was the norm because she'd probably seen it, happen in church. Somebody else had probably had some altercation with somebody else and went on a pulpit and sort of decided to chuck their darts. So she thought, it's my turn now. I'm going to chuck my darts on a few people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for real.
It's the balance. And as you were saying before, we need to have that, way of method in the house of God to learn how do we deal with conflict, how do we deal with not losing some really great, gifted, talented, anointed, purpose-driven people from the house of God. Because when I used to work in the corporate industry, there was a way that you dealt with if you were upset with even your manager and you felt that your manager didn't, wasn't doing something right. There was a way within the banks that I worked with, you can go and sit with them during your review or your appraisal and say, look, say to manager, you did this and I didn't quite like it. And he'd be able to say, okay, let me see how I can resolve that so we can work together to make sure that this company we're working for profits. I think that same model can be used in the house of God. We can, sit together, and work out our differences and then either agree to disagree, but, agree to work together so we can continue to fulfill the mission of saving, witnessing and saving souls and fulfilling our purpose on this earth, whatever that may be, until God returns or until he calls us home. So there is a way we can, if we really want to. And that's the question, do we want to? Because when we are dealing with conflict and we're dealing with people, it's hard work to want to make, to sort of sit with somebody. You're making yourself vulnerable in front of somebody who has potentially hurt you, and you probably have hurt that person too. Just bringing two people together who, you know, don't want to be in the same room, but said, you know what, we're going to do this so that God will get the glory at the end of the day.